The tall, gangly thing?
Hello and welcome. Today I'm joined by the winner of the Challenger Series number 1 for TFT Set 6. It's Aesah. Aesah, thank you so much for being here. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Now, Aesah, for anyone who may not be as familiar with who you are, why don't you just go ahead first and tell me a little bit about yourself?
I first started playing I played every set of TFT a little bit, but I first started playing like kind of seriously in set 2, but not super seriously. Like I got Challenger, and that was like kind of my goal. I was like, all right, I'm good now. And then in set 5, I got Challenger again. And set 6, I was like, that was one of the only sets I was active right when to start. So I was like, all right, I actually want to push for like the top ranks in set 6. I've peaked at like rank 3, like, and like close to that several times. But yeah, I just like play a lot in set 6. More about me personally, I've been a poker professional for like about a decade. I took a 2-year break in 2016 to work at Riot on their Summoner's Rift playtest team. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I went back to poker after.
Wow, that's crazy. I had no idea, especially that little venture into Riot as well. That's very interesting. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but history of competing and playing TFT. You said you were Challenger Set 2. Sounds like sets 3 through 5, I guess, were kind of not super interested, but set 6 you came back, and now you're kind of in the thick of it, really competing. Is set 6 the first time you've actually competed in an event for TFT?
Yeah, my first tournament was Piltover Cup. I did like pretty well in that. I wasn't top 16, so I had to play through I think 3 group stages to qualify for the final day. But yeah, I did pretty well. That was my first tournament. Then I played Alley Cup recently and had to play through qualifiers for that again, which was a real slog. I had to top for like so many lobbies. And then Challenger Series was my third tournament.
Now, outside of TFT, are there any other games you've actually played competitively? I know you talked about poker before, but when it just comes to actual esports, is TFT your first competitive game?
I have a really long history of like playing games at the top level. I wouldn't say I like played like competitively in like tournaments, but I think I've been at that level for a lot. In World of Warcraft, I was like rank 1 world, multiple seasons. I've been like Grandmaster StarCraft, like
Wow.
very high rank legend in Hearthstone. Just a lot of games. I play a ton of games and usually do pretty well.
So that's interesting because I know a lot of people I know who tend to be really good at one game that they play. There tends to be some sort of bleed over into other games that they play where they can kind of learn to improve quickly. Can you kind of talk about that? What is it about you that makes you able to compete at the high level of so many different games?
Oh yeah, I've been Grandmaster in Overwatch recently as well. I would say the most important thing is just like to have the right. I would say it's like two. The most important thing I think is the right mentality to like improve. I see a lot of people, just like just because it's fresh on my mind. There's 2 Reddit threads, not trying to flame these people recently, that come to mind. There's one where a guy was like, "How do I beat this board?" And it's like, dude, if someone just tells you the answer, like, why don't you like play that board, learn what its weaknesses are, and they're also saying like, oh, I can't get out of this. I can't climb past diamond because I keep losing to this. I mean, dude, okay, that's not the reason you can't get past diamond. So the right mentality is like, you got to figure out whatever you play a game, try to figure out what you can do better. And that brings me to the second thread I was thinking of, and it was complaining about how TFT did have a replay functionality. And I would be completely fine with this if they're like, hey, like it's kind of annoying to have to use OBS. But he was just like, "Oh, there's a replay. There's no replay built in, so I can't do anything about it. I can't get better." I was like, "Okay, it literally takes 5 minutes to download OVS or whatever recording style of your choice and like restore it." Like, so just say like the mentality is really important. I think, just like that desire to improve, and like a lot of people will like play like, like 40 games in a week and it's like, yeah, I'm really trying to get better, but they're not. They think they're trying to get better, but they're not really, like, they don't have that improvement like mindset. Yeah. Like look through your replay. Like most players, I would say, like if you're not challenger, even like GM players, I would say most players over 50% of the time are probably not playing their strongest board, even as early as like 2-2, which like is pretty simple, right? You only have like 15 units, but I would say like most players are GM and below are probably not even playing strongest board like more than half the time there. So it's just like go through your replays, like really take the time and like study.
Now, recently, obviously just a couple of days ago, you competed in the Challenger Series. And I think a lot of people talked about how stacked the lobbies were. There were a lot of favorites going in. I mean, obviously, Robin, Spencer, Sox, like those big three kind of going into the event. You kind of came out of nowhere and won this event. So I kind of want you to break down three different things for me. One, qualifying for the event. What your expectations were like going into the event, and then kind of just a general breakdown of like what it was like when you were actually in the thick of it and competing in this, very, very prestigious event.
The way I look at it, like there's like we talked about before the show about your recent tournament player versus ladder player video, but personally, like I think like out of every player in that lobby, out of all 16, like the cutoff was like 1400 LP. So I don't think even like the worst player in that tournament, I don't think is like that much. It's only like a few percentage points lower to win than like the best player in the tournament. So like when you say someone's a favorite, like personally, I think Sox is a favorite. He didn't make day 2, but I think he's probably like less than like 5% difference between like him and the worst player to win the tournament. So it's but yeah, that's kind of the mentality I have. It's just like everyone is really good, and like I said, I played poker for a long time, and like poker players who have played like thousands of tournaments, they know it's like, hey, you just play your best. You might win, you might not. And that's kind of the mentality I have. It's like I'm roughly somewhere about 1 out of 16 to win. I'm just gonna try my best. Yeah.
So I do want to ask, because it kind of sounds like there's a breaking point. Because right before you gave that answer, you're kind of talking about how GM and below, the reason that
definitely.
people lose is 100% player agency. It's only because you're not good enough. And it sounds like you're kind of saying there is a tipping point where everybody is playing as best as they can, and the best player gets a couple extra percentage points of losing, and the worst player gets minus a couple. Do you feel like that's... Because at least kind of from the outside, as someone who isn't a Challenger player, that does sound like, to be frank, a bit of a cop-out answer from a Challenger player to say, oh, if I lose, it's because I low roll.
I would say there's a few things to say about this. So I would say in like a Piltover Cup group stage, where it's like a lot of the players are like GM. Obviously, like no offense, GM players are top 0.5%. They're really good. But like in a GM lobby over 5 games, I feel like pretty confident I can like top 4. But I also think like using chess as a comparison, where Magnus Carlsen is 2800 elo, and like robots are like 3600 elo, which means they beat him like 99 point like something percent of the time. I do think if you play TFT perfectly, your chance of winning the tournament are extremely high. However, I do think out of the 16 players who qualified for Challenger Series, I think the gap between the top player and the bottom player, like I think like it could potentially be really large, but I think in practice right now in NA it's not that big. So I think I guess part of the reason I think like I'm somewhere around 1 in 16 is I think I'm somewhere around the middle. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I do think it is possible for a player to just get like really, really good and like really push that percent way up. But I think no one is there right now. Like I said, I think the best player is Sox. I don't think he's more than like 5%. Then that was a really stacked tournament. So I mean, it's just everyone's really good.
Yeah, it definitely was. And obviously, as a poker player, you are familiar with playing in a game that kind of revolves around this element of variance in it, right? And I know there's a lot to break down there. I don't want to take up like your entire night on this, so I kind of want to keep it simple. But how would you say the variance in a game like poker actually compares to the variance in a game like TFT?
I think it again depends on the skill. So it just depends on the skill gap. Because in TFT, you are making like literally like 1,000 decisions throughout the entire game when you factor in like positioning, like what items, econ, all that stuff, what units, augments, everything. So if there's like a big LP gap, like a 1,000 LP, even if you low roll, you're gonna gain a small edge on like so many decisions that you'll still win. But again, in like a really stacked tournament like Challenger Series, where just like realistically right now, the edge between one player to another player is not that big. I think there is definitely going to be a lot of variance. And we played 6 games, and 6 games is like I don't know if anyone listening to this plays poker, but the most similar format would be a single table tournament, which is 9 players, and people who play these full time have experienced multiple times throughout their career, like 100-game like losing stretches. So over 6 games, I mean, it's definitely possible for sure.
Now, kind of
with similar win rates, yeah, that you might have in TFT.
bridging
Sorry, one more. Sorry.
No,
One
go
more
for
thing
it,
about
go
the
for
win
it.
rates is like if you look on like lol chess, if you look on lol chess and just look at like the NA ladder, like no one has more than like a 20, like 3 at best percent win rate, and like a decent amount of your games on ladder do have that like 1000 LP gap I'm talking about, and even with that, you're still getting like 23% win rate at best. So when you're playing like Challenger Series, I don't think anyone to win any individual game is much more than like 16, 17, right?
I am curious to know kind of because you and I talked a little bit about the sample sizes in TFT earlier, and like how even going all the way back to set 4 isn't quite large enough of a sample size. Obviously, in poker, I mean, you're playing thousands and thousands of hands and games. Like, I don't know exactly what the metrics are, but if you were to apply that to TFT, how large of a sample size would you actually want to see before you could confidently make conclusions about a player's skill?
Personally, like I know people say there's a difference between ladder and tournament play, and yeah, it is. You do play a little bit different if you're in like a big LP gap, but like a lot of your ladder games, I mean, when you're like ranked top 16, right? A lot of your ladder games are with really stacked lobbies. It kind of depends on the time. Like when the set first came out, that was a lot more like everyone's like really playing. Those lobbies were a lot more stacked. Right now, kind of a lot of people are like sitting on LP for Zon Cup and stuff, so a lot of top players aren't playing. But I do think people overstate the difference between tournament and ladder play. I actually think a lot of people have it backwards because in ladder, the biggest LP gap by far, like not even close, is the gap from 4th to 5th. But in tournaments, it's 1st to 2nd. So, yeah, I think like a lot of people overstate that. So I guess in my opinion, the best indicator of a player's skill is their LP on ladder. Because I know there was I'm again not trying to flame them. I think great content. Don't talk if you don't know episode where they like had a bunch of players rank the players, and there are guys who like have never been that high LP on ladder with like 500 games played this season, and they're like, oh yeah, but in a tournament they're just gonna turn it up and beat everyone. And I'm like, I don't see how that's possible. I'm sorry. I do appreciate like the casters and like the community, like people like Frodo and Bryce. Like it's kind of I definitely get where they're coming from because overall, like it's kind of their job to hype up TFT and like, wow, this guy played so good, he won the tournament. Instead of just being like, wow, this guy got lucky and he had like maybe like a 10% chance to win and he got lucky and he won. So I do appreciate that, and I think it is good for the scene. It's kind of like I'm not really sure how to reconcile that, but yeah, I do think it is also fun to like rank players and stuff. So yeah, I don't know, but I guess I'm just saying like this is my belief on that situation about like what it actually is, but I do think it is fun to do stuff like that.
So kind of bridging the gap between poker and TFT. One thing I do want to know is kind of the skill set that comes with playing a game of variance. Do you feel like there are certain skills that you've acquired playing poker professionally that have kind of transferred over into TFT?
I mean, like I said, I've played like a lot of competitive games. I think the first thing I played was Warcraft 3. I actually didn't mention this earlier. I was rank 1 in USC, so on Warcraft 3 as well. Uh, in 2 versus 2 though, it wasn't as competitive as 1 versus 1. But yeah, I just think like competitive gaming, a lot of the same skills carry over. It's just like I said, I think the mentality is the biggest thing and knowing how to improve. Because I know like when a lot of my casual friends, who like they do play a lot of games, but they aren't like really high rank. Their logic, like we'll play Valorant, and they'll be like, oh, like I lost because like this map sucks, or like their team comp is OP, and it's like whatever. I mean, like come on, guys. Um, yeah, like this patch isn't balanced. It's like, oh, okay, next patch when the game is balanced, you're gonna climb 1,000 LP. Good luck.
Now, we've talked a lot about this balancing act between player agency and variance, right? There's a bit of both. Every game has it, right? And I want to talk about two different things. The first thing I do want to talk about first, though, is how in Set 6 you've actually seen quite a bit of consistency. You've, like you said, you made Final Day of Piltover Cup, made it through the open qualifiers, which were very large and not easy to make it through for the Alicoin Invitational, and then finally winning the Challenger Series against 16 of the best players on ladder. What is it about your skill set, or what do you think it is about you that separates you from the pack to actually enable you to find consistency in the tournaments of Set 6?
Again, with the consistency thing, I think I could have very, very easily not made the Final Day of Ali Cup, Piltover Cup, or Challenger Series. But I will say, for me, my personal skill set that I think I'm really good at is like figuring stuff out on my own. I know it's like a lot of top players are like, I mean, this is the kind of same with like any competitive game. There's players at the top who are really good at like innovating, and then other players at the top who are really good at just like seeing what the meta is. And it's the same with poker, seeing what the meta is and just following that really, really closely. Like in poker, there's kind of two kinds of players at the top. There's one that just like they read what the best strategy is and they follow it so closely that they're just like unbeatable. And the other is the ones that just have like really good intuition. I'd say I'm more like the second kind of player. And I think Set 6 out of all the sets so far really favors that because the augments just add more variety to the game. Like in Set 5, like in Set 5, like if you really understood like really well how like the Vel'Koz comp worked and then like the Jax comp worked, then like you're pretty much golden. But in Set 6, you really have to like there's so much more variables, like all the different augment combinations.
Now you had mentioned to me earlier before we actually shut the interview about this idea of almost invisible variance in games. And I'd kind of like to pick your brain on that for anyone who isn't listening, to kind of fill them in on what you were telling me about how variance may exist in other games and sports that people don't always see.
Yeah, so I mentioned like rock, paper, scissors, for example. Like some people could say it has no variance since you're choosing something and your opponent's something, but I think that's kind of silly because like it is kind of random, like who wins rock, paper, scissors. I think a really good example is like a basketball player making a free throw for like the game-winning shot or not, right? It's like you could say like it's skill, but realistically, like these NBA players have made like 10,000 or more free throws throughout their career. So it's like whether they make that one, like you could argue it's like, yeah, some of them are better under pressure, and that's completely legitimate. But they have shot so many free throws under a lot of pressure throughout their career that they're going to be like not 100% to make that, and you can't just be like, oh, he made it, he's good, he lost it, he's not good. So this happens in games, even with like games where you say there are like not variants. Like let's say just for example, like it's Valorant, you're in a final 1v1, you both know where each other are, and it's like whoever headshots the other guy first. You could say like you could say whoever gets that is a better player, but realistically the better player is only going to get it some percentage of the time, like maybe 70% if he's like really craft against another top pro.
Now, the next thing I actually have for you is I always open up these interviews to community questions, to people from the TFT scene who want to talk to you. We covered a lot of things that people had mentioned, but the one that we didn't talk about, this is a question that comes from @Boyses21, who wanted to know how you prepared for Challenger Series, and they also wanted to know if you did any additional preparation after making day 2.
I didn't do after day 1. Dude, man, some of these streamers, like, holy crap! I don't understand how like Solus and these other guys are streaming for like hours before the tournament, then they play the tournament, and then like they stream after or something. It's like insane to me. But after I played, I think 5 games on day 1, I was done with TFT for the day. I didn't do any prep, and like I just want to rest and like make sure I'm well rested and like reset my mental. I guess I don't want to play anymore. Like. Yeah. But for prep, I wouldn't say I did prep specifically for Challenger Series. It's more that I did prep throughout the entire season to improve my game. I just like watch all the streamers that I think I can learn from, which is like pretty much anyone that's like at least like 1,000 LP and stream. Well, I mean, really anyone, because like even if someone's 1,000 LP below me, I can still learn from something from them because TFT is such a complex game that like everyone has different skill sets, and I think like you really see that. You see that a lot in TFT because it's just so complicated that like a lot of the top players play completely differently, and that's why I think the skill cap is like so high, because theoretically only one of those decisions can actually be correct, but it's like no one really knows what it is because we're so far away. But yeah, I just prepped by like watching Milk stream, watching Stock stream, and like DQA, Solus. Who else did I watch a lot? Ramblin', Chromex. Yeah,
Yeah.
just like hop on these guys' streams and like watch them play and learn.
I feel like that's a through line I've heard from a lot of top players. Even the best players are always watching the other top players to get ideas. And kind of circling back to a point you were bringing up earlier on in this interview is just this idea of like having the right mindset and mentality for improvement. Obviously, it seems like the people at the top are doing the same thing, where it's this idea of like humility and always watching another player because you can always learn something from someone else in the scene. So it's cool to see that from even someone like you, who obviously coming off a huge victory has proven themselves to be one of the best players in North America at this time. Now, Aesah, that's actually all the questions I did have for you. But before we go, I did want to open it up. Was there anything you either wanted to talk about or any shout out you wanted to give?
There's one more thing I was thinking about the question you just asked. I actually watched Bobe and Bebe both. I just watched their VODs since I can't understand and interact with them anyway. And I think watching streamers from other regions is very helpful as well. I would recommend these two because I think, especially Bebe, I don't think he's better than Bobe, but I recommend him a lot because I think his playstyle differs very much from NA players. And I think obviously he's very, very consistently like high rank on the Korean ladder, which I don't know if it's more competitive than NA. It kind of seems like it is, but I don't know for sure. But he'll do things such as like roll on stage 2 when he's losing, so he doesn't lose too much HP. And I have literally never seen a single NA player do that, even one time ever. So I've seen them do it to maintain win streak, but like that's different, right? But yeah, I would recommend that as well. As for shoutouts, I guess just like, yeah, everyone who like streams. There's like so many people, but yeah, all these guys who are like streaming, sharing their knowledge. That's really good. I kind of feel like it's like I would love to share some of mine, but like every time I get around to like making a video, I feel like I'm too lazy. It's not fun for me. But I feel like it's almost unfair because like I'm taking all their knowledge and adding it to my knowledge, but I'm not like, they don't get to see like how I'm playing. I do like whenever I do try to share in like Twitch chat, but a lot of times like people don't listen to me because I mean, correctly so, like who would listen to Twitch chat? And also shout outs to like the Riot dev team. I think like they get a lot of flack obviously, but overall like it's game dev is a lot harder than most people think. And shout out to like Giant Slayer for hosting like great tournaments. I've played a lot of tournaments in a lot of different games, and like they always run things very smoothly. I know like there are some issues with like there's like a double up tournament, but like that wasn't their fault. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, Aesah, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate you you coming out here. And again, congratulations on the win at Challenger Series. Excited to see what you're actually going to do at midset. For all of you guys who are watching, thank you guys so much for getting through this entire interview. For more TFT coverage and content, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.